The Nintendo Switch 2 and the Apple Studio Display are both big investments in their own right, so it's a real shame that they're incompatible with each other straight out of the box. The Apple Studio Display is reliant on either a Thunderbolt or a DisplayPort connection, but the Nintendo Switch can only output HDMI. The good news is it is possible to run your Switch 2 on your Studio Display, and no, it doesn't require a capture card that's likely to introduce lag. You will, however, need a couple of specialist adapters to get this setup working, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it in today's video. First of all, I want to pay tribute to a Reddit user called ComprehensiveHat527 who actually came up with this setup. There'll be a link to his setup in the description of this video. When it comes down to it though, all you really need are these two adapters. You'll want to get an HDMI 2.1 to DisplayPort 1.4 adapter and plug that into the HDMI port on your Nintendo Switch. Make sure you don't forget to also plug in the USB 2 adapter into the front of your Nintendo Switch dock. Now all you have to do is take a bidirectional USB-C to DisplayPort adapter, connect that to the male side of the DisplayPort adapter and hook it up to the Studio Display using the Thunderbolt cable that came with that device. There you have it, you should now be able to output 4K at 60 frames per second to your Studio Display from your Nintendo Switch. But there is a bit of a problem because even this setup doesn't actually pass through audio. In fact, there isn't actually a way to do this. So what I've ended up doing was taking a little portable Bluetooth speaker, putting that underneath my Studio Display and just using it as a mini soundbar. But if you do want to connect to wired speakers that you've already got as part of your desk setup, then you could try this method. That's using this USB to 3.5mm headphone jack sound card adapter that you can pick up on Amazon. That way you'll just have to connect in an AUX code and you'll be able to output audio to the speakers of your choice. The total cost of these cables will be around $80 to $100, and it's a real shame that you have to jump through all these hoops and pay such a large amount of money just to get these two amazing devices working together. The Studio Display is locked to 60 frames per second, so you're not going to be able to run in performance mode and get up to 120 FPS like you would be able to on your TV, but it is undoubtedly a beautiful experience. The Studio Display has an exceptionally wide P3 color gamut. It supports up to 1 billion different colors, so your Nintendo Switch 2 games are going to look absolutely vibrant and beautiful coming through this monitor. Assuming you've got your Studio Display set up in a desk environment, it's also very convenient for using mouse mode in this setup. Of course, this isn't a gaming monitor, so there are other limitations you might want to think about. For starters, the Studio Display is not an HDR monitor. It can only reach a max peak brightness of 600 nits, which is far less than what you get on a true HDR gaming display. It is worth saying though that the Nintendo Switch 2 in handheld mode can only reach a max peak brightness of 450 nits, so you still see a noticeable improvement compared to playing this in handheld mode. There are no local dimming zones, so you may have to contend with a bit of blooming or motion blur from time to time, and as we've said, you'll have to constantly swap cables between your Mac and your Nintendo Switch in order to make this work, and that's just a bit of a faff. After jumping through all these hoops, is it really worth it? Well, I'd say definitely not if you're thinking about buying a Studio Display as a dedicated monitor for your Nintendo Switch 2. There are far better and cheaper options out there that will give you a much better experience that allows you to take all of those features on the Nintendo Switch 2 and make the most of them. However, if you are already in possession of a Studio Display and you don't want to pick up a dedicated gaming monitor, maybe like me, you just don't have the room in the house to even think about that, then this is one way you can actually enjoy gaming at your desk and still get that 4K 60 frames per second that really elevates some games like Breath of the Wild or Mario Kart World to another level. To hear what else I've got to say about the Nintendo Switch 2, check out this video here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.